there really is nothing quite like the element of surprise. When the Allied forces appeared over the horizon on the morning of D-Day, it completely caught the Nazis off guard. They weren't ready for such an enormous attack, at least not here. According to German intelligence, an attack was expected to take place 150 miles away in Calais. Most of their troops had been moved to defend that location. Before we continue, please subscribe to our channel and support our growth. While the Nazis were defending an empty beach, the Allies stormed their way into Normandy and ultimately went on to win the war. The Nazis had been tricked, and it was largely thanks to one man who had spent years fooling them from his own home. By feeding them correct but useless information, he led them down rabbit holes and ultimately tricked them into losing the war. This man had no spying experience, yet with sheer charisma and imagination, he managed to win the trust of Hitler while simultaneously becoming Britain's best spy. A chicken farmer's war. Before World War II broke out, Spain was having its own civil war between the Republicans and the Nationalists. No one despised the war more than Juan Pujol Garcia, a chicken farmer from Barcelona. His farm was seized by the government. His mother and sister were kidnapped. He was forced to fight in a war he wanted no part of. He despised extremism in all its forms, so when World War II broke out, he felt compelled to act against the Nazis. Pujol approached the British embassy in Madrid, offering his services as a spy, but British intelligence was skeptical and they rejected him. Undeterred, Pujol decided he would find another way in. The double agent. This time he went to the German embassy, pretending to be a passionate Nazi supporter who worked for the Spanish government. The Germans didn't have a reliable spy network in Britain, so they desperately needed help. Pujol was hired. They gave him a codebook, a bottle of invisible ink, £3,000 in cash, and told him to move to London and start spying on the British. Instead, he moved to Portugal and simply pretended to be reporting from London. Using nothing but a map of Britain and a tourist guide from his local library, he started talking about places he was visiting and things he was seeing. Military training exercises on Lake Windermere, warships leaving the southwest. In between all of the military sightings, he filled his letters with mundane personal details, going for walks in central London, visiting local cafes, even mentioning when he was feeling ill. To take things further, he started creating a network of sub-agents that were supposedly feeding him information from all over the country. The Swiss-German businessman stationed in Liverpool, the Venezuelan student in Glasgow, the Portuguese man living in Wales, the pilot carrying his letters from London. Each agent had a detailed backstory and family members that Pujol talked about at length. Of course, none of these people actually existed. But if the Germans ever questioned anything, his sub-agents could take the blame since they were the ones reporting the information. Each letter was so long and so detailed that the Germans started to believe him. They even started sending $500 a month to pay for his network of agents. The breakthrough. The Germans were impressed with Pujol's work, so they started asking for more specific information. That's when things took an interesting turn. In his third letter, Pujol reported that a convoy of 18 ships left the port of Liverpool on March 28th, headed for the island of Malta. Although Pujol made the whole thing up, by sheer coincidence, a fleet of warships had actually left Liverpool around the same time. But before his letter ever reached the Germans, it was intercepted by Britain's intelligence agency, MI5, sending them into panic mode. A full-scale manhunt was launched to track down this mysterious network of spies. But unsurprisingly, they found nothing. It wasn't until they really started reading through Pujol's letters that they saw something odd. According to one of Pujol's agents, people in Glasgow would do anything for a litre of wine. This sentence gave it all away. A litre of wine. This didn't reflect typical Scottish drinking habits, and Britain never used the metric system. The Brits then learned that the Germans had wasted time and resources trying to hunt down Pujol's fake convoy heading to Malta. It became clear that whoever was writing these letters was feeding the Nazis false information to confuse them. And it was working. MI5 was so impressed that they tracked down Pujol and decided to turn him into a real British spy. In April 1942, Pujol moved to London for real and was given the code name Garbo. Now, with access to real military information, he was about to take his deception to the next level. The African misdirection. The Allies were planning to launch a surprise attack on the north coast of Africa, where Nazi forces were gaining power. Over the next few months, Garbo started dropping very specific hints, suggesting that an attack was instead being planned for Norway. One of his agents saw military mountaineering drills taking place and Canadian troops gathering in the east of Scotland. Another agent heard rumors of Russian troops advancing westward. Without ever mentioning Norway, he gradually painted the picture that it was the likely target, drawing attention away from Africa. Hitler himself was particularly worried about this attack and ended up moving hundreds of thousands of troops to protect the Norwegian borders. Garbo's next move was brilliant. With the African invasion set to take place on November 8th, Garbo wrote another letter to the Germans detailing exactly how the Allies were going to carry out the attack. He dated the letter November 1st, but purposely held on to it for another week. The letter arrived in the hands of the Germans on November 9th, but it was too late. The day before, Allied forces invaded the North African coast with over 100,000 men. The letter had all the correct details of the invasion, but it was simply too late to be of any use. The Germans, however, were amazed by Garbo's work and replied, "We are sorry it arrived too late, but your last report was magnificent." Over the next several months, Garbo continued adding more members to his network, bringing the total to 27 spies. Of course, all of these agents had to be paid. By the end of 1943, the Germans were sending Garbo over $100,000 a month to fund his network. They were so pleased with his information that they stopped hiring new spies in Britain. With the network now in full swing, it was time for Garbo's masterpiece. D-Day, the greatest deception. The D-Day landings in Normandy were set to be the largest invasion ever carried out by sea. More than 2 million soldiers from over 12 different nations, all arriving in over 100,000 vehicles. Pulling this off without the Germans suspecting a thing would be an enormous challenge. But Britain had the best man for the job. To avoid information arriving late like last time, the Germans told Garbo to start sending his messages via encrypted Morse code instead of letters, with the ability to now send even more information. Garbo began sowing the seeds of doubt that would make D-Day an enormous success. One of Garbo's agents who worked in the London Underground claimed that the tunnels were being extended towards the southeast and that ammunition was being moved down the tunnels. Another agent saw assault barges gathering at the port of Dover and convoys of Canadian troops arriving in Southampton. Garbo himself began inventing an entire army of US soldiers and reported large numbers of them gathering in the southeast. All of this activity pointed towards a massive attack on Calais, the closest point to England. In order to back up Garbo's lies, the Brits started planting real evidence all around the southeast. Fake airstrips were cut into fields and hollow wooden planes were placed alongside. German planes started bombing these fake sites, so they knew it was working. A gigantic fake oil storage facility was set up in Dover and photos of King George visiting the site were placed in the local newspaper. Hollywood-style movie sets were used to turn modest boats into enormous battleships. Inflatable tanks were placed everywhere. They had built up an entire army of fake soldiers, vehicles, and supplies that completely distracted the Germans from the real preparation happening for Normandy. The goal was to convince the Germans that the Normandy attack was simply a trap and that the real, much larger attack would happen later in Calais. Amazingly, the British intercepted a conversation between Hitler and a Japanese ambassador, where Hitler mentioned that the first attack was going to be a decoy and that they were really preparing for the second attack elsewhere. By this point, it was clear that Garbo's messages were now landing directly on Hitler's desk, and he was believing everything. Whenever Garbo told them about movement in the southeast, the Nazis would move pins on their map. They made the crucial decision to move hundreds of thousands of troops to defend Calais. That was hundreds of thousands of troops that wouldn't be in Normandy. The night before. June 5th, one day before D-Day. Although the German radio operators usually signed off at 11:30, Garbo insisted that tonight they should listen out for a message at 3:00 a.m. Big news was expected from one of his sub-agents. At 3:00 a.m., Garbo reported that vomit bags and rations had been handed out to soldiers. This could only mean one thing: the attack was about to happen. But hours went by and no response was received. The Germans had gone to sleep. The Allies arrived at Normandy at 6:30, completely catching them off guard, outnumbering the Germans by more than 3-1. It was a brutal day, but the Allies managed to secure their entrance into France. Over the next 6 weeks, they continued piling troops, vehicles, and supplies in through the beaches of Normandy. Amazingly, the Nazis refused to move more troops to Normandy. In fact, they ended up sending more to defend Calais, waiting for the second attack that would never come. Every letter, every detail, every lie, and every truth had bamboozled the Germans, and it allowed the Allies to recapture Europe and win the war. The aftermath. Despite the defeat, Hitler was so impressed with Garbo's messages that he was awarded the Iron Cross. At the same time, Britain awarded him an OBE, making him the only person to receive war medals from both sides of the same war. After the war, Pujol feared that the Nazis would be looking for him, so he faked his own death and moved to Venezuela. And just like that, he was gone. Amazingly, this whole story would have never been told if it hadn't been for Nigel West, a writer from London. He was determined to track Garbo down. He got hold of a Barcelona phone directory and called every Juan Garcia in the area. As you can imagine, there were many. Eventually, one of Garbo's nephews picked up the phone and helped him make contact with Garbo. 40 years had gone by, but after a lot of convincing, Garbo eventually agreed to come over to Europe. He visited Normandy and realized just how many lives he had saved.